This worksheet and the next worksheet are going to include video links that will illustrate the possible impact of inflation on estimating cost data, as well as other shifts in cost structure that we may need to take into account to clean up our data to get a better estimate of the true underlying cost behavior. These will include seasonal trends, changes in wage contracts, the acquisition of new equipment, as well as adjusting for potential inflation. In this first worksheet, we're going to look basically at the impact that severe inflation can have on estimating costs and why we might include a price index or trend our data, or more likely we would call it working in base year prices. We've got regression output trying to estimate our total utility cost based on units produced and machine hours. And we can see with our basic data here, we can explain 58% of the overall variation in utility cost by looking at both units produced and machine hours. From our regression output, we see that units are significant at the 5% level, and machine hours would be significant at roughly the 14% level. If we take a look at a simple plot between utility costs and units produced, we see a fair amount of variation between our costs and the units we produce. By that I mean there's a fair amount of dispersion in our data points around our central trend line. And again, this represents the results of just a simple linear regression. One of the things I have built into our cost data is an inflation rate. And this inflation rate, it's extreme for our example here, is of 4% per month. And we can see what happens to the dispersion of our data points around our line as we increase the inflation rate from 4% to 5% to 6% to 7%. And as we increase it or decrease it, keep an eye on what's going on or happening to our R square. At a 7% inflation rate, we have an R square of 25%. At a lower inflation rate, our R square decreases. And we can reduce it all the way to a monthly inflation rate of 0, and we can see our R square is roughly 9%. So with no inflation, our units produced exactly explains our utility cost. But as we introduce inflation into our model, we have less predictive ability associated with our simple linear regression model and with our multiple linear regression model. Here's the output for our multiple linear regression model when we have 0 inflation factored into our cost data. Machine hours is a perfect predictor, and in the presence of machine hours, units, not so much. On our next worksheet tab, we're going to walk through how we would clean up some cost data. On this tab, we see a chart of total machine-related costs charted against units produced, and we can see we have an R square of 51 or 52%. We can explain about 52% of the variability in our total machine-related costs based on the number of units we produce. And we'll see on the next worksheet tab that our total machine-related cost is comprised of utilities, depreciation expense, and maintenance expense. And we'll look at the formulas that have been used to calculate those. In addition, we'll see how a shift in a cost, our depreciation expense moving from $10,000 a month to $13,000 a month, can put noise into our cost data and make it more difficult for us to estimate a cost relationship without cleaning up our costs. We'll also explain in the video how I've incorporated a seasonal trend in our data. Our utility costs are higher in the summer months when we're running our air conditioning to cool our factory. In addition, our depreciation expense, again, linked to purchase of new equipment, as well as we're going to have the impact of inflation and a revised wage contract, where beginning in the month of May, in the second year, our workers will receive a 7.5% increase in wages. As you might imagine, these shifts seasonally, increases in the purchase of equipment, changes in wage contracts and changes in the price index impact our total machine-related costs and reduce the linkage, or at least the linear relationship we might see between units produced and our total machine-related cost. So the videos on the next worksheet tab will take you through how the data was constructed and how to clean it up by using dummy viet variables to account for seasonal trends, shifts in the equipment purchase, wage contracts, and also incorporate a price index.